People who have cheated passing away by missing a flight, calling in sick, missing the bus, etc. What happened and did it change your perspective on life? I stayed in my car to listen to the end of the news on the radio after parking up. As I turned off the ignition, someone speeding lost control of their car and skidded straight into the back of mine, driving it 4 meters forward and through the cars in front. Tore the back off mine and rode off 2 other cars as well. I got a bit of whiplash and was rather dazed for a couple of days. The other driver was banned and charged with a string of driving offenses. If I hadn't stopped to listen to the radio, I'd have been halfway out of the car instead of restrained inside it, and the other driver would have added more charges. Now, this is a story that NPR needs to start using in their fundraising campaigns. Story 2. Traveling around Europe on a top deck tour, I started to get very unwell. Headaches, nausea, memory loss, muscle weakness, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. All I knew was that I needed to get back to the UK to the family I had there so I could get help. I was in Poland and was judged too sick to continue with the tour, so I organized a flight to the UK. Taxi driver and hotel reception actually needed to physically carry me into the taxi to get there. A kind taxi driver gets out at the airport and finds a wheelchair and stays with me for a while. The flight admin says that due to the wheelchair, I need to get on the plane via the wheelchair lift. I protest and say I can walk, but they are adamant. I get wheeled into the wheelchair lift, but a mechanical failure means that the flight leaves and I'm stuck in the lift, grounded as it was the last flight. Got put up in the hotel by the airline that night. The receptionist at the hotel inquired about my illness, and as they had some medical background, they determined that a doctor should be called. It was Christmas Eve, so no one was around, so they took me to the emergency department. Was put into ICU for 2.5 weeks after suffering 2 cerebral venous thrombosis, strokes basically. Would not be alive if I had gotten on that flight. Did not change perspective on life, but it did give me an ability to understand that anything can happen. The experience also gave me massive psychological trauma, so you win some, you lose some. Story 3. I suppose this is more traumatic experience, but it's almost shocking it didn't end in the worst case possible. In high school, a lot of my friends were talking about going to a basketball game against the rival school. I don't think I had ever attended a sports event in school, but everyone seemed really hyped and I wanted to go to at least one game to see what it was like. I'd gotten dressed for the game, and when it came time to take the walk back to school, I realized how hot it was. Gotta love Arizona. Said, yeah, right, and went back to my room to hang out online. I got a text later that night from my dad asking if I was okay and did I see anything, and poor, confused me, had no idea what happened. Come to find out, some group members ended up at the school and made a scene at the building where the game was taking place. The brilliant security at my school thought locking everyone inside the building, literally shoving students into the gym and shutting the doors behind them, was the best way to deal with a school accident scene. Luckily, no one was hurt, but they very easily could have been. The only way it affected my life, aside from having my bag searched when I entered the school, was that I realized my laziness had managed to save me from dealing with that particular incident and whatever trauma that would have come from it. Story 4. I didn't miss anything or call in sick per se, but I was due to have a back operation for scoliosis. And on the morning of the operation date, the doctor came to my bedside and said he'd had a dream or a feeling that he shouldn't operate on both curves of my spine and only do the top one, the worst one. I just agreed to whatever he thought would be best. I mean, I could always go back for another op if it needed to be. And thank God he had that feeling because I literally drained out as quick as they were pumping some into me. I was chucking it back out. The operation should have lasted 3 to 4 hours, but mine lasted 8, nearly 9 hours because I wouldn't stop draining. He said if he had opened my whole back up, I would have most likely passed away. I would just like to thank anyone who donates samples. You are unsung heroes, and thank you to doctors and nurses who do everything they can to help save people. You're brilliant. Fun fact, Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't have any tattoos because he wouldn't be able to donate samples for a while. That's how often he reportedly donates. Story 5. I was at a mall once with my brother and mother, and we were on vacation, so we were walking all day. My mom wanted to go to this one store to go Christmas shopping for my other brother, but my brother that was with us was tired and wanted to get supper. My mom kept arguing with my brother that she would have only been a couple of minutes, but since my brother that was with us is a complainer, we decided to go for supper. We came back from supper that evening and learned that there had been an accident in that mall like 5 minutes after we left, and it was right in front of the store we were going to go to. A couple of people passed away, and me and my mom and my brother were terrified for the rest of the night. Went back to the hotel for the night and watched the news and didn't go to that mall the rest of our trip. We would have been right there in the middle of the accident had we actually gone to that last store my mom wanted to go to. So it's a good thing that my brother complained about going for supper. And he learned that day that complaining actually saves lives, so he did it even more. Good for him. Some say he's still complaining to this day. Story 6. My fiance was leaving my house to run an errand. My dad was on the way home, so I stayed to talk to him since I hadn't seen him in a while. He had seen a terrible accident on the way home and talked to me about safe driving. I wasn't a great driver. Turns out he had seen my fiance's car and he was gone instantly. If I hadn't wanted to talk to my dad a bit, I would have been gone too. Years later, I still am diligent about telling people I love them and how much they mean to me. I don't remember if I told my fiance that he was leaving. I'll never remember our last words. I'm also a better driver and have all the safety features available on my car. So tell people you love them, tell them why you love them, and tell them often. Story 7. When I was a lot younger, I got used to participate in a show for CBBC, and my mom drove me there, and we got there really early. There was a park nearby, and she suggested we go for a walk, and me being the lazy child, I whined that I didn't want to go to the park and just wanted to wait at the reception. Surprisingly, my mom said okay to this. She normally forced me to go to parks and be active. Anyway, a disaster went off in that exact area of the park my mom wanted to visit at the time we wanted to be there. I think I was a little too young to realize how scary the situation was. Another time, around the same time as that event, my mom decided to take the morning off work and go to the gym. When she came out, she had loads of calls from people who had thought she passed away. A criminal had set off one of the trains she normally took to work at that exact time she would have been. Since she left her phone in the locker and hadn't checked it for a couple of hours, a lot of friends and family thought something had happened to her, but she was fine. Story 8. July 2005, I was waiting for a number 30 bus that was already due but was really thirsty. I wasn't going anywhere and that I needed to be punctual for, and there were other buses going that way anyway, so I went to a shop, bought a can of Coke, and came out to see my bus pulling away from the stop. No big deal. I got on the next bus along and soon we got to a diversion. On the usual route, I can see police, ambulances, and thousands of people out on the street. Eventually, the driver tells us that the service is terminating. As we get off the street, it's full of people and really tense atmosphere. I asked someone what was going on and found out that an hour earlier, 3 devices had been set off on the tube, and a few minutes ago, the number 30 bus was set off in Tavistock Square. Obviously, I don't know where I would have sat on that bus, but if I had survived the accident or not, it did shake me up for a few days. It didn't really change my perspective, but oddly enough, for a few months afterwards, I kind of felt like the chances of avoiding that situation only to be caught up in any kind of repeat were so slim that I felt less concerned than a lot of people around me. I know a few who were worried about using the tube for a while, but I felt almost like I'd been given a free pass for a while as well. Story 9. Not me, but my grandfather. And strangely enough, we were talking about this afternoon. My grandfather was a lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy. At this particular time, he was serving aboard HMS Centaur, and as an engineering officer, his duty at the time was to oversee the boiler room. Well, it was my grandfather's birthday in 1962, and one of his crewmates very kindly agreed to swap watches with him so my grandfather could enjoy his birthday. Then this happened. On the 19th of November, while exercising in the Irish Sea, there was a sudden loss of pressure in A boiler room, which in turn led to a loss of power on the port engine and trip lighting and radar circuits. This was caused by the burst of a main steam pipe in the boiler room and superheated steam at 700 degrees Fahrenheit, about 371 degrees Celsius, and at the pressure of up to 500 psi, about 3,400 kPa, escaping and ending the 5 crew members on duty at the time in the boiler room. Had my grandfather not swapped watches, he would have ended up in the boiler room. Understandably, he doesn't like to talk about this too much, but it is very strange to think that, well, if he hadn't, my mother would have never been born, and as a result, neither would I. Story 10. Walking home from school with my best friend, and we're in the start of the 4th grade. I see an ice cream truck. I say I want to go get some ice cream because for once I had some money my dad gave me still on me. He says, I have to whiz really bad. I'm going to run home and whiz and I'll meet you in a few. I said, okay, and went to the ice cream truck line. While in line, I hear a long skrrr heard tires screech and then a loud noise. I ran to the side of the truck. It's someone in the middle of the street. A little ways from where I was, I walk up to him and don't recognize who it is initially. His shoes were up the street further from where he was. I yell, "Who is this?" People were already screaming, but now it's quiet because everyone is looking at me. There were about 15 people out there, mostly kids also walking home. People are looking at me and looking back confused, like, why is everyone staring at me? Some girl ran up to me and was like, "That's friend's name?" I'm like, "What? That's not him. He ran home to go whiz." The girl grabs me, yells at me to stop joking around. Right there. I don't realize this, but I'm in shock looking down at my friend and he's a stranger to me. I don't recognize him. Then it all got to me and I lost it. I ran to his parents' house and had to tell them the bad news, all while my friend was still on the street and people were frantically screaming and trying to get a handle of the scene. I always envisioned myself pulling him back and saving his life if I didn't go to the ice cream truck and was standing next to him. But there's also the thought that never leaves that I could have ended with him. I'm 37. I still think about this till this day. No details are lost after all these years. Everything is clear as day. He was in a coma for a few days, but then his mom pulled the plug. I couldn't go to the wake or the funeral because everyone thought we were brothers, and the mother said she couldn't look at me because I looked so much like her son, and we did look very similar as kids. Story 11. Obligatory not me, but my grandma. My grandma and her husband, not my grandpa, more like step-grandpa, both work at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. My grandma, already on vacation in Texas, decided to not drive the day she originally planned for and extended her leave one extra day, April 19th, 1995. That was the day of the Oklahoma City accident. Unfortunately, my step-granddad lost his life in that accident, among many other people. I still remember my grandma on TV speaking on the tragedy, and her story was even published in one of those Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I don't remember which one. I'm thankful for my grandma still being here with us today, but also saddened that so many people lost their lives to a vicious crime. She's become more of an adventurous person in her life since and now travels wherever and wherever she can. Story 12. Was at McDonald with a friend in the early hours of the morning, maybe 3 a.m., had gotten our food and went to leave so we could eat at home. We get to the car and change our minds, so we decide to eat in the car, then leave. Within 30 seconds or so into our meal, we hear a car screaming down the road, heading toward a main intersection. Traffic light for him was red, but he didn't care, nor did he slow down, and then proceeded to run into an innocent driver crossing his path. It sounded like a loud noise had gone off. An innocent driver's car flipped and landed upside down in front of a business, and within seconds, there were about 5 to 6 police officers on the scene. Turns out the speeding car was stolen and the schmuck driving it unscathed, leaving an innocent person gone. If we had not stopped to eat in the car park, I'm 95% sure that would have been us just getting into an accident. Story 13. Was supposed to go to a party 2 hours away from home with cousins and a group of friends. We had split everyone into groups in order to fit us all. One car was a sedan, most of the people went there. Next was a Honda Accord, which was seating 2 couples. And the last one was the ride I was supposed to go in. My cousins were the same age at the same time and borrowed their mother-in-law's Altima for the night. Before we all left and stopped at my house due to a family party happening and all our parents were there, we stopped and said goodnights to our parents, but my mother bugged me not to go out tonight. She kept telling me to stay, so I ended up staying and I overheard my cousins, JR and Groom, Mom, tell me not to go out as well. They all left in a hurry and the night was done. In the wee hours of April, I received a phone call that my brothers passed away. They had an accident on the freeway. What a tragedy. What could I have done with them? Would I change the outcome? So many questions. Story 14. Not me, but my sister. She used to really like to hang out with friends. And that particular day, I was outside doing chores, so she had no car. Some friends called her and told her they could give her a ride. That day, our mom was having none of my sister's shenanigans and decided that they were going grocery shopping and no parties till shopping was over. My sister threw a little tantrum, but eventually went with my mom instead. I came back from my chores and see my sis and mom on the kitchen table. My sister is sobbing and my mom is in shock. Turns out the car that was supposed to be giving her a ride had an accident. My sister thanked my mom for standing her ground and ignoring the mini tantrum she just threw. Story 15. I don't know if I cheated one myself necessarily, but I may have saved my dog's life 2 months ago. It was a Saturday night and I was at my best friend's bachelorette party. Nothing too crazy, just having some drinks and playing games at our house. It was a pajama party, so I'd come with pajamas and other things we could do to spend the night. Now, I've only had one drink at the beginning of the party, and by the time the other girls started going to bed around 2 a.m., I decided that I'd rather go home and sleep in my own bed. So I got home, noticed that my husband was still at work, so I parked my SUV in the driveway and crawled back into bed. About an hour later, I woke up to what sounded like someone furiously pounding on my front door. Now, the bedroom is on the ground floor of my house, and the bedroom door leads to the front living room. My big 140-pound dog sleeps in this room, usually in front of the big window in front of the driveway. Other times, he sleeps on the couch, which is adjacent to the window. Turns out it wasn't someone at the door, it was noises from a weapon. Someone turned the corner and used their weapons just as they were passing my house. My neighbor's house was their target. 3 projectiles went into the SUV and totaled it. Had I parked in the street of our husband's little sedan in the driveway, the projectiles may have been at just the right height to go through the living room wall or window and take out my dog. In my opinion, that was way worse than me or my getting totaled. I couldn't live with myself if anything like that happened to him. So we moved our bed and slept in the basement with all the dogs. Story 16. My mom saved my life when I was a child. I went in for that checkup many parents skip. While at the doctor's office, my mom commented how I seemed to stand crooked, so the doctor took and looked and noticed a lump near my kidney. It was a cancerous tumor known as Wilms tumor. To understand the rarity, in every 100 kids that have leukemia, only one has Wilms tumor. I was that one. In less than a week of chemo and tests, I was having my right kidney removed. As a kid, I often ignored just being annoyed about how I can't do contact sports due to my parents' fear of injuring my lone kidney. But I'm 19 years old now. My mom is now very good about being safe than sorry when it comes to odd health issues. I'll always be thankful for that, and of course, have also gotten into going to the doctor for odd things. Those trips, 9 out of 10, my doctor links to a defect due to chemo at a young age. My frizzy hair, my deformed chest, and my horrible underbite that I had braces on for 6 years to correct. But hey, I'm alive, my kidney is enlarged and learned to do the work of 2, and I'm currently trying to chase some dreams. Who knows where I would be if my mom just shrugged off me being a little crooked. Story 17. I was in Charlottesville and nearly missed getting injured by the car that ended Heather Heyer because I stopped to take a picture. So I got to Seville late in the morning. I parked far away and heard the protest had broken up and there was a commotion, so I decided to walk down Water Street and stay away from the park where the statue is. As I was walking east on Water Street, I ran into a very large group of counter-protesters who were cheering, etc. I decided I was going to turn the corner at 45th Street and go up to the pedestrian mall. Right as I got to the corner, a feeling just made me turn around to look behind me. This older black lady was standing quite a ways behind me, just looking at me, smiling. I don't know why my eyes picked out her bag in that big crowd. She had a shirt on that said Virginia Defenders of Freedom. There was something about how happy her face was, so I turned around and walked towards her to get a picture. In doing so, I walked out of harm's way because literally as soon as I clicked the picture, the vehicle driven by that crazy schmuck took everyone, and the 2 cars he slammed into wound up right where I had been standing. As I was looking at the cars and people on the ground and thought, holy moly, I turned back around and she was gone. There were other people wearing that shirt, but she wasn't there anymore. I survived ovarian cancer and it felt a bit like that. I had massive tumors and was told the worst. Made out my final arrangements and went into surgery assuming I'd have about a month or less if I made it through the surgery. I woke up and felt better than I had in years. The recovery room nurse said the entire OR started cheering when they realized my tumors turned out to be 2 massive teratomas and were likely going to be benign. Funny story, as a joke, I wrote on my chest in Sharpie, "Insert superpowers here," with an arrow pointing to my abdomen. It was that same kind of, holy moly, did that just happen? I'm not religious, but as a GOT fan, all I can say is that the Lord of Light must still have need of me. Lol. So I live every single day to make a difference in someone's life. No matter how small or large the day is, we don't know until it's over, until someone has benefited from me being here. Yeah, the Lord of Light definitely has plans for her. And if you're enjoying the video and learning a thing or two from these, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 18. Can I answer from my best friend? Because she had started working in the Pentagon the week before an accident. She and her new coworkers were scheduled to be in a meeting at 9:30 that morning, but she was running late because she had to use the restroom. As she was washing her hands, she heard a loud noise and felt the building shake. When she came out, there was smoke and chaos everywhere. The fire barriers were coming down, and they were going to be trapped in the section that was, or appeared to be, on fire. A young Marine knew where the override button was that stopped the barrier's descent, and she was able to get out of that section. She exited at the river entrance and walked through the Metro bus depot on her way to a friend's home in Crystal City. When she got to the overpass, she looked back at the Pentagon and realized the point of impact was at the conference room where her meeting should have been held. All of her new coworkers were gone. Her name means grace, and she said she felt it was God's grace that allowed her to live. She's been even more determined to serve Him every day since. Story 19. A few months ago, my husband and I decided to try a restaurant in our area that we had talked about going to for like years, but it just never happened. It was a well-rated gastro pub sports bar kind of thing with a higher-end menu. We finally planned to go on the following Sunday when we had childcare. It was Super Bowl Sunday by chance. My grandmother was going to watch my daughter that day while we went to eat, but got a sudden work offer at the end of the week for Sunday. She's a musician. So we flipped the plans to go Saturday instead. No big deal. We went, we ate. It was relatively uneventful. The place was boring as a doornail. We were the only people in the dining room. We did witness the owner of the restaurant accepting Super Bowl bets, however, and we hear him saying how he expects a constant full house tomorrow, etc. Best day of the year for him. When we heard that, my husband and I said to each other we were glad it worked out this way. We hadn't considered we would be dealing with a crowd the next night and aren't into that, so we were glad our time frame had changed. The following Monday, we hear that in the evening when we would have been there was a kitchen fire accident that quickly leveled the place. Most people got out from the bar area with ample exits, but many didn't as the place was jammed to capacity and the dining room that we sat in had only one exit, which walks you directly past the kitchen, and another door that opened into the kitchen itself. That's where we sat. The room had tables for probably 50 people, and the windows had those decorative iron rails on the outside, so it was effectively a trap. The place is gone now. I mean, gone. The chill it put down my body when I heard what happened was insane. It took the breath right out of me. As far as how it changed me, I'm just grateful and humbled. I think about it often. We would have orphaned our preschooler. It's a scary thought for sure. I've also learned to be more aware of my surroundings and don't accept a seat in an enclosed room like that. I do a quick safety check that we can exit from more than one direction and make sure we aren't right on top of the kitchen. If a restaurant is only set up that way, we don't eat there. We have immediately left places before, but not without telling this story to them and suggesting they create a new exit. It may sound like fear-mongering and I've gotten eye rolls and such, but 24 hours was the difference between my child having a mother or not. It's something I'll never forget. Story 20. Not sure if this applies or not, but when my parents were debating on whether or not to go ATVing or horseback riding when on vacation, we decided horseback riding because I couldn't drive the ATVs, so we decided it would be better to all do horseback riding. So we were about a fourth of a mile from the ranch when my horse said, "Dude, I want to be the first one back to the ranch. I don't care if I'm not the lead horse." I had no idea where we were or how close we were to the ranch, so my horse goes full gallop back to the ranch. This was the first time I have ever been on a horse, mind you. So I just decided to go full-on jockey and stand up. The horse makes a 90-degree turn back to the ranch and my saddle slips sideways. I decide to put my hand down and fall, but my foot gets caught in the stirrup, so he drags me and my foot comes undone. After I get up, all I could think was, that was awesome. But looking back, I could have gone full-on Christopher Reeves. I was very lucky, and while I don't think I cheated passing away, I still could have been in a world of hurt if things didn't go exactly the way they did. This ranch also had issues with their horses in the past. Needless to say, horseback riding is no longer a suggestion on family vacations 12 years later. Story 21. Wifey and I went to St. Thomas. First evening out, we hail a cab for a night on the town. Me, wifey, and driver get out of the cab, and he gives us a few pointers about where to find what. I pay him, give him a nice tip, and turn to cross the road. I look to my left, no cars are coming, so I lean forward to hustle across the street. I feel a strong tug on the back collar of my shirt. My front foot goes up in the air. I hear a loud horn honk and a car whizzes by from my right going 55 plus miles per hour. Like in the UK, in St. Thomas, travel lanes are reversed from the States. Had the cabbie not yanked me back, I would have surely been gone or wished that I was. I think of it from time to time. I always wonder if the cab driver knew what he did. As for change, when friends mention they are traveling to a country that has reversed traffic direction, I tell them about this occurrence and make sure I have their attention. Story 22. Mumbai accident. Was supposed to be there, but my friend got some weird case of culture shock and really wanted to get out of Mumbai ASAP, so we hurriedly took the night bus the day before. I saw someone reading a paper the next day, quickly bought one and showed it to my friend. She was like, OMG, we were supposed to be there. We're like those people who dodged some accident because their kid got sick. This was actually the second time I properly cheated one because I also survived an attempt to end it all earlier. I joke that I'm hard to end. To be honest though, it's mostly for the first few weeks you feel a bit on edge and pump adrenaline and get the idea you need to do something special with your life. I do remember that maybe for 3 weeks or so, it became very crystal clear what I wanted in life, then it faded. On good days, I still think I might still have a useful part to play on this earth, but to be honest, I don't really believe in predestination. What it has taught me is not to delay things you really want. Story 23. This very moment taught me to trust your instinct. Little context, this was when I had just graduated from high school and got a job. Still living at home and working close, I would usually stay over at my friends'. We'd play video games and such, but took every night to stretch our legs and go down to the gas station for snacks. Jump forward one night and we get to the intersection about a mile or so from our destination. I stopped in my tracks and felt sickeningly uneasy. We looked at each other and all I said was, "Let's go to Speedway." He didn't even question me, and we continued on like normal until we saw 3-4-ish cruisers fly down the main road. We took a major loop back through some of the houses because why not be nosy? We got to the UDF we usually went to, meaning we had gone every night for about 7 weeks at this point, except a few opening shifts. And before we even got close, the police were telling us to clear out. We had taken off to home as fast as we could and finished the night of confusion and terror. We were woken up by my friend's grandmother nearly breaking the door down early in the morning. We then learned that the UDF was involved in an accident that night. Trust your instincts, kids. Story 24. This didn't happen to me. It happened to my aunt. My Oma had a stroke the day before my aunt was scheduled to fly to Asia for a work conference. My aunt's business partner and best friend Susan agreed to go in her place for the meeting while my aunt rushed to be by my grandmother's side. The business partner's commercial plane went down somewhere near Indonesia. There were no survivors. She left behind a husband and a son. My aunt has suffered from incredible guilt since her best friend's passing. She has stayed close with Susan's husband and son, helping them financially plan their future and negotiate a large payout from her company, and the airlines too, to fund college for Susan's son. It was a messed up thing to happen and was all very sad for our family and Susan's family. The cause of the plane crash has cause of controversy. It is believed to have been the pilot's mistake. However, there has been discussion about the malfunctioning of a piece of equipment, the rudder, which may have contributed to the whole thing. Story 25. Might get buried. When I was younger, I snuck out of the house to go meet my friends at like 2 a.m. This is in Singapore, so cabs were pretty abundant at that time of night where my house was, but for some reason that night, none of the cabs stopped for me. Literally, like 5 to 6 cabs just went by, one after another. I was quite angry, so I was very aware of the number plates of the cabs. A few seconds after the last cab went by, one finally stopped. When I got to the highway about 2 minutes away from my house, there was a massive traffic jam. At 2 a.m.? I was already angry about being held back by the non-stopping taxis, and now there was a traffic jam. When the cab I was in finally reached the end of the jam, I saw that it was caused by a massive traffic accident. At least 3 ambulances, and I saw a bunch of teens in stretchers sitting on the roads and in the cars. It included a cab which had the plates of the last cab I missed. I swear to God, I lost my breath. Now I'm completely aware that if I got into that cab, we might have missed it by mere seconds, or I could have been in an even worse accident. Story 26. Obligatory, not me, but my parents. My dad was being moved by his company from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. They had the going away party at his office, and all the big shots all came down to give him gifts and rewards for his service at that location. After all is said and done, he and my mom printed their tickets and were just about to head to the airport. Right before they left for the airport, my dad received a call from his boss that the regional VP would be coming down on short notice the following day and that he wanted him to do a handover/exit report/presentation with the VP. He tried to explain his way out of it, considering he would miss his flight if he stayed another day, but to no avail. My dad was very much annoyed. He had to reschedule their flight, extend their car rental, hotel reservations, as everything was sold and already shipped just for a 1 hour meeting. The flight that my parents missed was MH17, put down over eastern Ukraine. The consequences of the incident were lost on him. He went from being a very career-oriented, results-driven, and achievement-based man to one who seemed to enjoy life a lot more. He ended up retiring soon after that at 53 and is now living his life to the fullest. He just picked up Zumba and hiking and is traveling to exotic countries most months out of the year. All in all, it worked out well for him. Story 27. Fun story. When I was younger, me and a friend used to use large rocks to break through the ice at the local lake and jump in. The water is still warm inches below the surface for a good while after it freezes. Felt really nice. One day, however, I couldn't find the opening. I had swam down to look at something, and when I swam back up, the hole wasn't where I thought it was. I was already very nearly out of breath and started to panic. I swam back down and looked up and spotted the hole. Just as I got there, I realized that it wasn't, in fact, the hole. My lungs were convulsing by this point, trying as hard as they could to force me to breathe. I was terrified. I started knocking the ice, trying to break through, but you have no power there, no leverage, but I kept trying. I just had to get through. This couldn't be it. Just when I felt hope was lost, my buddy out of nowhere grabbed me. He had seen me trying to break through the ice and came in to show me the exit. Either that or I've hallucinated the past 21 years as part of my experience. Not sure I'll even know for sure. It didn't really change my perspective on life. I suppose I was too young for it. Story 28. My first adult job after graduating was at a maximum security prison. They offered a $5,000 sign-on bonus, plus paid some additional money for schooling, so I thought it was a win-win. I had worked all morning in the yard before getting ready to go home. We were short-staffed, so I volunteered to cover a call-in for C-Cell House, which at the time was our worst cell house and had the most dangerous offenders in there. I had changed out my keys and everything when I got told someone called in for comms and I was going to cover that call-in as I was comms trained. I passed my keys off to another female officer and told her I would see her at the end of the shift. Later on, both officers in the cell house were harmed by inmates during dinner time, and the officer that took my place was gone. Apparently, they had planned on harming the officers for a while and caught both by surprise. I was the one that made the call for outside medical. It left me feeling like maybe if I hadn't switched with her, no one would have gotten harmed. Story 29. I'm late to the party here, so this will probably be buried. I graduated high school in 2000. Back in the 90s, I lived in a poor U.S. state. My parents had big dreams for me. However, I couldn't afford out-of-state tuition in either of these states, so my parents arranged for me to live with a set of either of two aunt-uncles for more than a year before I graduated high school, my junior and senior years of high school. Essentially, I was going to live with my extended family for a year, then go on to attend UC Boulder or a North Carolina university. So in 1997, I was given two options, either live with my aunt and uncle in Littleton, Colorado, or with my aunt and uncle in Greensboro, North Carolina. My aunt and uncle in Greensboro had a younger kid that I would be responsible for helping me take care of, and my aunt and uncle in Colorado had two dogs and were pretty cool. The summer of 1997, I visited both towns. I was enamored with Littleton and Denver. I knew that was where I wanted to go live, and Colorado is just the most awesome state ever. In the summer of 1998, my parents and I made arrangements for me to move out to Colorado. I went back for a week to visit what would be my new school, get signed up for classes. I had to make sure they had Spanish classes because it was the language I was studying at the time, and get other logistics worked out. Again, the trip went amazingly well, and I came back to my poor state super jazzed for August of 98. Super sad, but my aunt and uncle had both their dogs passed away in an accident after they got a hold of some antifreeze that had spilled in their garage. They were devastated, so they called off my trip. Quick arrangements were made for me to move down to North Carolina, where I eventually attended a much less cool, but also way less murdery high school. In April of 1999, the high school that I had visited in Colorado had a problem. I heard about it on the news in my new hometown. Two kids caused a horrible accident in the school in what was really the first school accident of its magnitude. It was so crazy to watch the news and see pictures of a place that I had been to and fully intended to be at. I had pleaded with my aunt and uncle to let me come despite what happened to their dogs. I still get the heebie-jeebies about it. Story 30. My buddy scored tickets to see Great White in Rhode Island at the Station nightclub. I wasn't really a fan, but I had just broken up with my longtime girlfriend and wanted to get out, so I agreed to go. The day of the concert, I came up with some lame excuse that I can't remember now, and he went by himself. And we all know what happened next, and he never made it out. I really tormented myself a lot. I kept thinking that maybe if I was with him, he would have stood somewhere else in the club. Maybe I could have pulled him to safety, and more realistically, maybe I would have been gone too. Maybe he wouldn't have passed away alone. I actually didn't find out he passed away until several days later when his name was printed in the newspaper. I remember a family member coming into my room, tossing me the paper and saying, sorry. I couldn't bring myself to go to his funeral. I was too upset and wrought with guilt. I did speak to his family afterwards, and his parents told me that he had secretly been planning to fly to California and go to school because he was impressed by me going to college here. He never told me about that. I assumed he was waiting until everything was in place. It changed how I feel when I go to venues for sure. I always look for emergency doors, I always look for locks, and I always get really nervous if a band uses pyrotechnics. Living through the grief with my friends and family of my friend afterwards made me realize how rough it would have been on my family if I had gone to the show. My mother was extremely sad watching the news all day after the fire broke out. Even if I had gone and survived, I think the PTSD from the event would have been far too monumental for me to deal with. Story 31. I was driving home on a long commute about 18 years ago in the rain on an interstate. Seems as the cars went in and out of the heavy spring showers and over hills, traffic became congested and wrecks started happening. I came over a blind hill, luckily not moving much more than 45 miles per hour due to the heavy bursts of rain, and saw that traffic was at a dead stop due to previous wrecks piling up. I pressed the brakes hard, realized I couldn't stop in time, and decided to go into the grassy median instead of running into the truck in front of me. Within a split second, I felt a slight tap and the roar of a semi passing me. It took out the truck that was in front of me and several more cars in front of the truck. Luckily, no one was harmed. I realized afterwards while thinking back on it that if I hadn't driven that particular car that day and had instead driven my other car, I regularly switched between them due to the long commute to split the mileage, that I would not have gone into the median. The car I had driven had brake issues and the other car would stop on a dime. If I'd stayed in the lane being able to stop properly, I'd have easily been between the semi and truck in front of me. I went back to college to finish a degree and started applying for jobs closer to home so that I wouldn't be in that situation again. Only a short 5-mile drive to work on much less dangerous roads, and I'm much happier where I work now, so win-win. One decision of which car to drive that morning would have made a huge difference in several lives, but you'll never know when those big decisions are. You can only realize it later, so just enjoy the journey since all of our destinations are the same in the end. And if any of these stories got to you and you learned a thing or two, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.